kids cannot read, kids cannot write, okay? You need to know that kids cannot read, kids cannot write. I'm not saying it's your kid, but a lot of kids are struggling to even hold a pencil. They're struggling to hold a pencil.
The craziest thing to me about Gen Z is that they cannot write their signature and they can't read an analog clock.
And they have no interest in learning either.
Because they print their signature. Even if you don't teach them cursive, at least teach them how to sign their name, something that's unique to them. Even if it looks like a doctor's signature, something.
My signature, first initial squiggly line, second initial squiggly line. But it's my squiggly line. No one else can do my squiggly line.
You know, they have to sign the cell phone sheet for state testing, so they have to print their name and then sign their name.
It looks the same.
Like, this ain't a signature. Like, at least connect the letters or something.
Print
I
their
don't
name
know.
on the first box, signature, C, box to the left.
Some schools, they told them they can't. They have to have a digital clock in the room.
So this is the reason your student can't write. The reason your student can't write is because they're not focused on it. I can remember when I was in school, we actually read something and then we wrote something all the way through. Kindergarten to 12th grade, right? Whether it was a short story, we had to answer questions, right? Or when I got into middle school, in English class, we would read a book, we would analyze the book, we would have questions to answer, we would write, then we would write a paper, we'd have a thesis, and this was in middle school. I had students when I was in high school teacher that had gotten to me and they were in 11th grade and hadn't written one effing paper. But then we were screaming about how we were preparing them for college. Raise your hand if you went to college and all you did was write papers. Raise it high, higher, higher, because you are not going to be able to survive that institution if you don't know how to write. I mean, you're not even really going to be able to survive in a job that requires you to use email as a form of communication because you can't write, nor can you spell. I was so happy to see some of our teachers get it and it clicked and they started doing spelling tests on Friday because I remember having spelling words on a Monday. We practiced all week. We wrote them in sentence. We understood the definition. And then we spelled them on Friday as a way to improve spelling. You know what they do now? Oh, well, if they read enough, they'll be able to spell context. Or they have programs like Lucy Calkins, and this is no shade to Lucy Calkins, because, you know, when I used the program, I used it effectively because I had a consultant who sat right by me and showed me the process. So my kindergartners were writing full sentences by the end of the year. But that's not happening now. So if you're wondering why your child can't spell and your child can't write a sentence with proper punctuation, it's because it's coming from the schoolhouse. And I can put that out there. As a consequence for one of my students, I asked them to write me an essay, right, on vandalism. And I literally had to break down introduction, first body, second body, conclusion. It was just a 4-paragraph essay. Do you know what I got? I got a whole page just filled with writing. Now, why aren't your kids learning that? And you're like, but they're in elementary school. Right, but they should be learning a fundamental way of writing. So when they get to middle school, the middle school teacher has something to work with. So then when they get to high school, the high school teacher is not teaching your child basic writing because they know how to do that or how to spell.
Dude, I was grading these midterms this weekend and I just started shaking my head and he looks at me and he goes, yeah, these kids can't write for shit. And I lost it. I feel bad because when they're going through high school, you know, all of their teachers are, one of two things are happening. Number one, they're either saying, oh, well, this was good, and they're not giving the proper time to help them improve, or they're just too scared to say, this needs to be improved.
Right,
you know?
right.
Like, so it's very much one of those two things. And it's like, well, they come to me and they write these things, and I'm like, it feels like you've never written something a day in your life. And it sucks. Because, like, I stress that you have to be able to write. And you have to know how to write.
That's how you're going to get your message across. I was an English major, so I took a lot of these classes where you have to read other people's stuff or, like, you know, groups. And I would feel that way reading other people's stuff. I'm like, you suck. It's like, I mean, one thing that would always bother me was, like, you know, grammar, or just like using the same word like 3 times in a sentence. Like, don't you like read this back and know it sounds like stupid?
Not being those parents who do not teach our kids also at home. Just because your kids go to school don't mean that the teaching stops inside the house. Okay, do you understand 40% of U.S. kids cannot read or write at their grade level? 40% kids, 2/3 of children cannot read or write at their grade level. They are behind. Okay, the kids from grade 3 to 8 are illiterate. Do you understand how bad that is? We need to be teaching our children. I read to my children. I show my children how to write. I have desks in their room. So at night before bed, even if it's 30 minutes, you sit down with them and you help them. You make it fun. And there's so many ways you can do that.
Hi, Mommy. Okay, so there are a few activities that you can do with him to help him with his writing. So number one, before he can write, he needs to know how to hold the pencil correctly, and by this, he'll be able to control the pencil. So he needs a strong grip on the pencil, and to develop muscles necessary for that, you can use pegs or even tweezers. Picking up things with tweezers or pegs develops and strengthens the small muscles. Number two, he needs to know how to draw lines. Yes, I know it sounds, but lines, circles, and shapes, basic shapes. If he's able to recognize shapes and to copy them, then he'll be able to recognize and copy letters.
Okay, these teachers or these parents are absolutely correct. Okay, so between curriculum overload, constant testing, and the lack of time, writing instruction is actually something that's disappearing. Teachers are forced to move on. Okay, you are forced to move on. You don't have time to be correcting how somebody holds a pen, a pencil. We don't have time for that. We have so much to cover. So we are told to move on when kids haven't mastered the basic skill of writing. And now with AI tools everywhere, some students are skipping the process entirely. They don't know how to organize ideas, develop arguments, and write a proper paragraph. So now it's not only just about holding a pen, it's about the writing, the process of collecting your ideas and putting it pen to paper or idea to computer. The process of it, these kids are struggling to do that.
Kids graduate high school without ever having read a single book all the time. And often these students have all A's and B's when they graduate. People find this very baffling, but I'm going to tell you exactly how it happens. Let's start all the way back in kindergarten. K through 2 is when you're supposed to learn how to read. And I don't mean learn how to comprehend a text. I mean learn how to actually break down words, sound them out, and this should be happening through phonics instruction. The issue is that phonics instruction was out of vogue for a while, even though it's the most important factor in a student's reading comprehension. So if a student was in kindergarten in the early mid-2000s, there's a good chance that their teacher wasn't really giving them any phonics instruction that they needed, and instead they were just learning how to make guesses about, the next word in a text. This does not work. It has been proven over and over again to be ineffective. Let's say a student now moves on to third grade. In third grade, there's a shift. K through 2 are supposed to be learning to read, and 3 through 12 are supposed to be reading to learn. So each year, 3 through 12, kids are getting increasingly complex texts, but they're not really receiving instruction on how to read. This is when frustration sets in, and that frustration is ultimately going to manifest in avoidance of reading altogether. The task of reading when you don't know how to read is painful. If you don't believe me, go pick up a book in a foreign language that you do not speak and try to read it for 20 minutes and comprehend as much as you can. But here's the thing, as kids get older, it also gets embarrassing to not know how to read. So instead of saying, I don't know how to read, kids say, I hate reading. It's boring. Now you have an identity around being a non-reader, and unfortunately that can stick for a long time. Okay, but how are kids passing high school classes, often with A's and B's, when those classes require them to read books? By high school, non-readers have developed a really advanced set of coping mechanisms, because the whole time they were not acquiring the skills of reading because we weren't teaching them. They were acquiring coping mechanisms so that they can still do well enough in school to meet whatever standards they or their parents have for them. This could look like cheating on assessments, but there are more benign ways to get around reading, like listening during a class discussion, repeating what your classmates are saying, trying to remember some of those points, and then using them when you write your essay about a book you've never read. As a school system, we are far too focused on the product, which is the essay or the final test, and not the process, which is the reading. So ultimately, students know that that is what they're being graded on. That's what they need to do, is perform on the task. They find ways to do it without reading. And ultimately, they can graduate high school, maybe with all A's and B's, go on into the world functionally illiterate.
Okay, so what can we do? I think that, in my opinion, I think that we need to still have a dedicated writing time in class. Not just worksheets, but, proper writing practice. Now, of course, this is theoretical and as well as practical writing. We need to have that again. Secondly, schools need to stop racing through the curriculum. I don't know. I mean, obviously I have teachers from different countries watching, but the race through the curriculum is one thing that is actually an impediment to helping these kids know how to write. Finally, the schools need to support teachers when it comes to having resources that help children. I hope I'm making sense. Resources that help the children. If you are a teacher, if you are a parent, do let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.